Alright, now this method of playing Swordsoul probably isn't as good as the other two, but I still wanted to throw it in there. It's not quite branded Swordsoul, it's somewhere sort of stuck in the middle. It's Bystial Swordsoul. I think branded Swordsoul is a really cool deck. It is one that I have been tinkering around with and one I'm still kind of working on, and I want to bring some branded Swordsoul content out. But for now, what we're going to be focusing around is this card in particular, Branded in High Spirits. Now, we covered a deck profile in the past utilizing this card, and what it basically does, for lack of, to sort of summarize it, is it searches your deck for Ecclesia, right? Now, how does it do that? Well, you basically reveal a monster, you send a branded fusion from your extra deck to the graveyard that matches that monster's type, and you basically then get to search your deck for any monster that lists the Fallen of Albaz in its description. So by revealing a worm, you send a worm, search Ecclesia. You reveal a dragon, send a dragon, search Ecclesia, right? Now that opens up all kinds of doors, and I imagine there being some sort of crazy plays with Cartesia and everything in here, and that is absolutely something I'm looking to explore in the future. But for now, for the purposes of this little comparison series, I'm fairly confident that this comes in third place. I think Kashtira Swordsoul and regular Swordsoul are both better than this version of it, especially right now with Bystial's not really being super hot. But either way, wanted to throw it out there nonetheless. So if you're interested in this or anything else that we do here, again, new video every single day, so subscribe if you want to catch more, like it if you actually enjoy what you're watching, and if you want to show that little bit of extra support, you can of course join us as a member using the join button below or the link in the description. But however you choose to show your support is very much appreciated, and I'm not going to hold you up here at the beginning of the video. Let's get into game number one. Alright, now before we go very much further, I just want to clarify that the entire focus of this deck is of course around Ecclesia. That is the center point. The Bystial engine is cool in and of itself because it does Bystial things. The Swordsoul engine is cool because it does Swordsoul things. The bit that brings them together is Ecclesia, and Branded in High Spirits is what helps facilitate that union, for, again, lack of a better description. So this game in particular, it's a bit of a longer game, it doesn't end right away. We're going to go for Ecclesia here off the bat to bring out Mo Yi from the deck. Mo Yi, reveal Taya, summon a token, use token and the Mo Yi to go into Grand Master. What's his name? Shizao? I always forget their names sometimes. Shizao then gets Searching, Mo Yi gets Drawing, so we're going to draw one into Duel and Lockbird, which is a card that I am loving more and more nowadays. I think Duel is a fantastic card right now. We're going to search off the Grandmaster as well. Going to discard a card, summon out the Strategist, summon out a token, go into Baron de Fleur, and there you go, Baron de Fleur plus Baron de Fleur, Grandmaster, Blackout, and 3 hand traps. That's a pretty fucking solid situation to end in. We're going to go for Maxi in the draw phase. They're going to go for Pearly Sleepy Memories. We're going to start drawing cards as we're playing here. Pearly then going to get hit with that Baron de Fleur. We maybe could have saved this for like a field spell or a My Friend Pearly, but in my head, if he had those cards, he would have started with those cards. So I'm thinking, yeah, okay, maybe it's not like super important. Maybe we can just hit the Pearly with that and hopefully shut him down completely. They're going to go for the Triple Tactics Talent. Every time I look at this card, I want to call it something else. That's not its name. Tactics, right? So they go for Tactics. They actually steal our Grandmaster, which also happens to turn off our Blackout. Both of which is a fucking problem, right? They're going to go for the Pearly Lee, which is what we were saving our Grandmaster for. So because we lost our Grandmaster, that's a bit of a fucking problem. We definitely probably should have negated its own effects, but that's fine. They're going to go for My Friend Pearly here. Now we're going to activate Duel and Lockbird. Duel and Lockbird is huge against Pearly because that means your My Friend Pearly isn't going to do jack shit. It means your regular Pearly isn't going to do jack shit. It means your Pearly Lee isn't going to do jack shit, assuming you haven't already used it, which he has in this case. But you know what I mean? We're shutting down so much of their ability to generate resources passively, which is super good. Plus, it's also a Maxi counter, which is, I just love Duel right now. I think it's an excellent addition to most decks that are especially weak to Maxi. They're going to go for E-Pearly Beauty here. They're going to play material onto it. E-Pearly Beauty is going to drop our Grandmaster to steal our Baron. And just like that, through Duel, our opponent has actually managed to, for the most part, break this board. Going into Zeus to mop up the last of it. Going to detach 2 materials. Going to wipe out our Blackout, keeping 2 materials attached to itself for good measure. We, of course, do have the infinite impermanence from the summons that he did this turn. We're going to go for the Imperm. The only thing as well, and a very common misplay that I always forget about whenever I'm playing this card, is that this also turns off your own maxi, which is something that I always forget about. So that is worth bearing in mind. It does clash with maxi of your own. I was fairly confident in using it because I really liked my hand. I felt like I had a really solid shot at going ahead with the cards in my hand, so I was confident in using Duel there. Thought it would hurt him more than me. But either way, just something to remember. We're going to go for Mo Yi here. Mo Yi, reveal Vishuda, going to summon out another token. Going to synchro summon once again, this time into Boxia. Boxia getting rid of the negated Zeus. Mo Yi going to draw us an extra card as well. We're going to draw into another Ash Blossom, pretty handy. And now we're going to use Boxia to pop itself to bring back Taya. Taya then is going to facilitate the summoning of a token through banishing the emergence from the graveyard, now allowing us to synchro summon into the Grandmaster to help us just set up our play. So here's a... what I need you all to realize, right, is what you're about to see is a pretty big misplay. I have been awake for hours and hours and hours playing and recording over the last number of days, preparing for my vacation. And I was pretty tired when I made this play. So whenever Taya popped up here for me to pick a card, I thought it was Grandmaster adding one to my hand. So I sent Long Wan to the graveyard, which is a huge misplay. Huge misplay. But just pretend for imagination's sake, let's just pretend that the Sinister Sovereign, right, this dude right here, is like right here, right? Let's just pretend he's on the board. Use your imagination. I'm sure you can manage it, right? Use your imagination. He's right there. Can you not see it? I can see it. Right there. 2900 on your screen. It's right there, man. So the strategist would have been able to banish this card upon activation, which meant we would have actually been able to save our Ash Blossom for something else. So being able to banish that, because it's a continuous card, it needs to be face up at the point of resolution to actually have an effect. So our Sinister Sovereign would have stopped that from doing anything. But luckily, again, our opponent instantly just folds. We're going to go for the Baldrake here. Baldrake is going to get stopped by the trap card in the graveyard, but that's fine. We pressured him in using it early. We have the emergence in hand, and I'm pretty sure our opponent doesn't stick around past this. Yeah, they don't. So let's just pretend I didn't misplay there and it all went according to plan and I wasn't running on like -7 hours of sleep, alright? All part of the plan. Easy dubs. Game 2. Alright, getting into game 2 here, starting off going first here. We're going to start with Dara. Dara special summoning himself out of the field. We're going to go for Mo Yi now. Mo Yi, of course, revealing Vishuda, summoning out a token to synchro summon into the Grandmaster. This is, again, fairly typical turn 1 Swordsoul plays. It's really what you want to be seeing, honestly. We get to draw one, we draw into another copy of Adara, that's fine. We're going to now search our deck for Long Wan. Long Wan's going to drop the Vishuda to the graveyard, summon itself out to the field. We're going to set up another token to go into the Baron de Fleur, and we're simply going to use Strategist, burn for 1200. Now we're going to go Drissworm, banishing the Vishuda. We're going to use these two now in a synchro summon for Yazi. This is a pretty interesting play that the Bystials help you do a little bit more consistently. Now with Yazi on board, true, its own effect can't be activated to destroy itself because our opponent doesn't control anything, but Baron de Fleurs can. Activating, targeting the Yazi to pop the Yazi, going to summon out Taya from the deck. Taya now activating to banish the Yazi from the graveyard, summoning out a Swordsoul token, going into Drag 8. Now that is pretty awesome. So now we're able to send an Ashina to the grave, and on top of everything else that we had before, we now have Drag 8. That's pretty awesome. So that might be something you want to lean a little bit more into when it comes to playing Bystials and taking advantage of that level 6. They're going to go Fenrir here. We're going to go for the Grandmaster, negating the whole Fenrir's effect, which is going to be solid. It means that he doesn't get the search, and he sure as hell doesn't get the banish. They're going to go for the Pearly now. Pearly activating, Pearly, sorry. Going to get negated by Baron de Fleur. Fairly straightforward. Again, that's not a card you want to have on the field. We're going to get rid of that. They're going to go for now the Delicious Memory, which we're going to use Dragite to negate. Again, we're just shutting down every play that our opponent has. We're going to negate and destroy the Delicious Memory, and we're going to go for another Delicious Memory, being met with an Ash Blossom. We just have infinite negates, or we did, but now we have none. But hopefully our opponent just doesn't have any playable cards. They're going to go for Fenrir, of course, not being able to do anything. They're going to now go for the Happy Memory, targeting the monster here, sending out a Pearly, actually able to go into E Pearly Plump here. So our opponent, against all odds, managed to actually summon a card. They're going to yoink some materials from grave, but they don't have enough gas to get anywhere from it because they ran out of cards. And just like that, the Bystial play into the Yazi is one of the better plays that I find Bystials can actually contribute to Swordsoul, something that they actively bring. They of course bring sort of passive interruption, banishing your opponent's cards from grave, blah blah blah. That's cool. But one of the best things that I've seen them do is enable the Yazi play with significantly more consistency. So that is definitely something worth bearing in mind. If you're ever wormlocked there, instead of going into drag it, you just go into the Draco Berserker instead, which is also a really fucking good card. But yeah, pretty solid stuff. Let's get into game 3. Alright, getting into our third and final game here. Starting off, we're going to go for the Adara, frame 1, normal summoning the Mo Yi, to reveal the Mo Yi, and our opponent's going to have a Veiler. Once again, the kryptonite of Swordsoul's, Veiler, Imperm, anything of that description is just so painful to go up against. And because we're not playing Danglong, we don't actually have any plays we can make here. Unfortunately, it wouldn't really have made too much of a difference. Our opponent is playing Labyrinth, which does make our life pretty difficult. We're going to go for the Max C. They're going to respond to that with their big welcome Labyrinth, so they can summon prior to the resolution of Maxi, but it does force them to use it early, summoning out Ariana to bounce Ariana back to hand. They're now going to use the Chandelier, adding itself back from the graveyard to the hand. Standby into main, they're going to go for Ariana, using its effect, searching the deck for Labyrinth Stovey. Battle Phase, taking out the Adara. Interestingly enough, that makes total sense. We're going to use the Torby now. Torby going to drop itself and the Chandelier to set Welcome Labyrinth directly from deck to field. They're going to set 3 more cards and pass. So quite a daunting board from our opponent. They're going to start off Welcome Labyrinth in the draw phase. We're going to meet that head on with a Maxi of our own, but they have that call by the grave, stopping us from drawing cards. That does, of course, tell us that they plan on summoning more than once. So we're in a bit of a precarious situation here. Swordsoul isn't exactly the great into breaking boards, so we're going to have to see if our opponent has something we can actually break. They're going to go for the Big Welcome, which of course they had Big Welcome as well. Using Lady Labyrinth at the Silver Castle, they're going to set Infinite Impermanence directly to the field. They're going to summon out Lovely from the deck. They're now going to bounce a card back from field to hand. Going to bounce back the Lady because it can resummon itself from the hand, of course. Now they're going to go Lovely to pop a card and Ariana to draw a card. Torby adding itself back to, special summoning itself back to the field, while the Chandelier adds itself back to the hand. I don't know if anybody noticed, but it's still my fucking draw phase. I would like to play a card, please. So Torby comes out to the field, special summoning, drawing, generating advantage like absolute mad lad. Popping the Adara in our hand, which unfortunately makes Swordsoul in our hand dead. Not that it would have done much in the face of that board, but again, what do you do? It's impossible to ignore that Swordsoul has a major weakness to some of the simplest hand traps in the game. It's hard to ignore that. That's where things like Circle come in. That's where hopefully Tenyi extenders and such come in. But it's bad. It's painful. But either way, let's get into the deck profile. So, Swordsoul Bystial. You can really take this in one of 2 directions. It depends on how hard you want to lean into the Bystials. Now, something that you can definitely do is, of course, remove the Branded and High Spirits package and maybe cut down on some hand traps to fit in some more Bystial cards. Maybe even going as far as playing Lubellion and the back row options. If you really wanted to do that, you absolutely could. But for this particular version, I did want to play around with Branded and High Spirits. It's not a card we get to use very often, and it is a decently powerful card, and I do like using it on occasion. So that was the focus here. But there's a lot of different ways in which you could interpret the deck Swordsoul Bystial. So bear in mind, there's a ton of ways of doing it out there. Some ways are going to be better than others. I really do think one of the primary benefits that Bystial Swordsoul bring to the deck, other than of course disrupting light or dark based strategies, is going to be the synergy with Yazi and Adara. So I do really think after playing it for a bit, I would probably bump Adara up to 3 to try and make that as consistent as possible. I would maybe drop Branded and High Spirits to facilitate that, and perhaps play Circle of the Tenyi as well as another viable option. Heavenly Dragon Circle, sorry, is potentially what I would do here. Maybe even finding room for another copy of this. Again, I'm not really afraid of going over 40 as long as we keep it as low as possible. I think this is probably the direction you want to take it in, but I'm playing it like that will also free up 2 extra deck slots to play around with. But again, that's entirely up to yourselves. I'm just showing you a couple of possibilities what you can do. This is the deck as we played it, so that's the deck I'm going to talk about. Speaking of flex spots, let's cut those flex spots out, shall we? First of all, we have anti-maxi cards, which you got Duel, Maxi itself, we got the Ash Blossom, we got Called By, we got Crossout. We also have double Imperm, as well as, oh, that's not a flex spot, as well as Nibiru, the Primal Being. So there's 14 spots with which you can play around. 14 is a lot, right? 14 is a lot of space, especially considering we're playing slightly more engine than we normally would have in a lot of other Swordsoul variants. And that's taking into consideration Branded in High Spirits as a core card, which it really isn't. So yeah, 14 spots with which to do whatever you want. Now we're going to get into the deck. I'm not going to break down all of these cards individually because I just did that in my previous video in terms of the Tenyi and the Swordsoul cards. So I would recommend going back and watching the previous video, which I'm going to put in a little card in the top right corner if you want to get a look at that. We are playing, of course, in terms of our worms, 3 Moyi, 3 Taya, 3 Ecclesia, double Strategist, double Vishuda, double Ashuna, and 1 Adara. We are not playing Shifana in this particular build because we aren't playing Heavenly Dragon Circle, but if you wanted to bump a Heavenly Dragon Circle in there, you could of course also consider playing Shifana because it becomes a pretty good card. I would definitely consider that. So yeah, that's something to think about that you can play around with, absolutely. That's probably going to be one of the better ways of playing it as well. Another card that we weren't playing that you could consider if you were to cut these cards for the extra deck space, you could consider playing the Chaos Angel, which is a pretty solid card. But you can sort of go into that off of Ecclesia and one of your Bystials. If you wanted to lean more into the Bystial side of the deck as another very powerful option, Chaos Angel is pretty damn strong, especially in a deck like this, which genuinely relies upon synchro monsters. So that is yet another option for you. And I know this isn't the traditional deck profile in the sense of going over all of the cards, but we've already gone over the whole Swordsoul deck twice within the last week and talking about different variants of it. You don't need me to bend your ear talking about these cards over again. So again, just check the corner and at the end of the video, you'll see Swordsoul decks on screen, which you can go and follow. But yeah, that's pretty much all of the new cards. What exactly does Branded in High Spirits do? I did talk briefly about this, but unfortunately it didn't come up during the gameplay very often. Basically what it lets you do is you reveal a monster in hand, you'll send a level 8 fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard with the same type and 2500 attack or defense. Then you can discard the revealed monster to add either a Fallen of Albaz or a monster that mentions it. The monster that mentions it is of course the Incredible Ecclesia, which is a very powerful card. It allows you to special summon any Swordsoul monster of your choice directly from deck. It is a level 4 tuner light monster that can be special summoned, and as a light monster that sacrifices itself for its effect, it means that you're almost always going to have a light monster in grave to summon out your Bystials. So it's definitely pretty good. It's a little bit unnecessary, admittedly, and you really don't want to eat up too much extra deck space because there is a few cards you would really like to play in the extra deck, but I'm going to leave that up to you guys. You can play that however you want. That's everything that basically I have to say here. So if you want to get a full detailed sort of breakdown on how these Swordsoul cards themselves work, check the videos on screen right now, click into those, and they will tell you exactly how the Swordsoul cards work if you're unfamiliar with the deck. But short of that, if you got this far and you haven't subscribed, go ahead, subscribe, like the video, and I'll catch you next time. Bye bye.